Okay, let's see. Recording,
Lights.
lights, windows, connected.
Yes.
Perfect.
My glasses here. I don't really remember if there's anything.
How are you, Andy?
I'm good. Feeling a little down, but no, it's just busyness and things like that. So.
Oh.
But we had a good union meeting, and I want to talk to my friend about that. So it was good.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm doing well as well. Get it, Andy. We never prepare for talking about. Anyhow, welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Abarca with Andy Lipson. Happy May Day. Well, yesterday was May Day.
May Day, yes.
Yes. So today's topic will be about Spain and its elections. But I just want to say something because to honor. Yeah.
You were thinking of that. Maybe we should not do this about Spain.
Yeah.
We should do this about May Day. I really had no idea what to do this week. This was all your ideas.
Yeah.
And you had wanted to maybe talk about Spain, and I was like, okay, let's do that.
First, it was about reparations.
Yes, and I thought that's a good one.
Yeah.
But we weren't ready for that.
Yeah, we weren't ready because we were both busy.
Yeah.
And then we were discussing this all can be edited out. I'm just thinking out loud. Then I was thinking, then you were saying that we can discuss something about education, which was actually very comforting to know. But then, because I was thinking we can have an open-ended discussion, I don't have to prepare for it.
Yeah.
And then we decided, hold on, I forgot, there is the Spanish elections.
Yeah.
So, yesterday was the 1st of May, and it was International Workers' Day, and people here in the Bay Area gathered in a lot of places that I normally do not think of outside in suburbia, outside of San Francisco, but there were rallies held because I was listening to KPFA, I'm a big listener to that, and there was rallies in Oakland, and there were rallies in Embarcadero, as well as the Civic Center, mostly in the afternoon. I think that May Day was the perfect time in 2005, when there was a lot of people wearing white in support of immigration.
Yes, there was a big time. Definitely got connected to the immigrant rights movement back about 10 to 15 years ago.
And speaking of immigration related to Latin America, because that's mostly the immigration that happens here in the USA, there was something interesting that happened in Mexico, and Mexico has a very good reason to celebrate. They just won the right to organize and negotiate their own pay.
Who's they?
Workers.
Okay.
Workers. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador enacted a labor reform bill Wednesday that for the first time gives workers the legal right to bargain collectively with employers through independent labor unions without fear of retaliation or harassment. The bill sailed through the House of Representatives earlier this month, and senators unanimously passed the bill Monday. So there you have it.
So he's handing over union rights to one set of workers while he's chasing other workers into the forest as they try to cross the border. Is that right?
You're referring to immigration.
Yes.
Yeah. Chasing.
Well done, AMLO.
Central Americans crossing the border. Always finding something, huh? It's always the moment, isn't it?
I'm sorry, that's the way it has to be. You can't
to
just go after one set of workers and then, to say, I'm giving you something else. No, it's no good.
You're like just hijacked my...
I'm not going to let you get away with celebrating AMLO after he did that. No, sorry.
What I want to say is just to say that I think that there's something to say about International Workers' Day. Maybe I'm carrying and covering Mexico, but
don't try to slip AMLO into International Workers' Day. You can slip AMLO into International Chase Immigrants Around My Country Day.
Yeah.
You can do that. But no, I mean, and the original May Day was the fight for the 8-hour workday, but it was led by immigrants. That fight for the 8-hour workday back in the 1880 something.
Yeah, the Haymarket.
And that the Haymarket Martyrs. But it was all around the fight for an 8-hour workday. And it was also around the radicalization of the labor movement being led by immigrants coming from Europe, possibly South America, but I definitely know Europe and Russia and Ukraine and Poland and places like that. So, yeah.
Well, I think that what we were discussing sometime over the phone, is that we might even do something next year about something to delve into it more, because this is true, and it even goes farther back, as I was listening to KPFA yesterday about how in Egyptian times, and there were even, just because it's around spring, and agricultural is something that workers always, it's something about agriculture and workers, because our very basic practical work really comes down to practical means, which is agriculture, and it was around that because of spring. So we should discuss this further, and we will next year, because it may
possibly next year. Maybe our episode will land on May 1st, as opposed to the 2nd.
Yes.
One day. Okay, we'll see. But today
we will be discussing the Spanish politics, as I said. So
the Spanish elections,
the Spanish general election,
what they mean in terms of the rise of the right and what's happened to the left there, and I think it has big implications for this country.
So let's just give a brief
overview.
Thank you. The 2019 Spanish general election was held last Sunday, which was the 28th of April, and it was to elect the 13th. It's very important to say the 13th, because I will explain in a bit. Cortes Generales, which is parliament in Spain. And this is all 350 seats of Congress of Deputies were up for election, as well as 208 of 266 seats in the Senate. Now, why do I say the 13th of the Cortes Generales, or Parliament? Because we have to remember that I've tried to look up, I just didn't do it in my math, but in 1977 and 1978 was after Francisco Franco, which was the longest dictator in Europe, longest dictator in Europe,
fascist dictator. After the Spanish Civil War, that essentially the fascists crushed by 1936 or so.
Now he died, and then there was the Parliament, Cortes Generales, was put in place. So it's a very recent, young so-called democracy. Yes.
So-called, that.
So what so that's why I said the 13th, because it's been the 13th. Now, Andy doesn't want me to go into details about how things run in Spain.
And at the same time, I asked you to give an overview, or a background on this.
Ay, Dios mío.
Sorry, you're caught between a rock and a hard place.
So let's just say, okay, like I said earlier to you,
I asked Eduardo to explain how this whole 350 parliament, how do you form a government?
In Spain, you do not vote for a president the way that you do here in the USA for our US American audience, or in Mexico as well, we vote for a presidente. But in Spain, just like in England, you have to vote for your representatives. That be in Spain, senators and diputados, your deputies. And the way that it just briefly works is that you choose, you go and vote in every region. There are 50 regions in Spain, and Catalonia and the Basque region has their extra representatives because of special circumstances that I'm not going to go into right now. But I think that if you know Spanish history, you know why, for Basque and for Catalonia. But the point is that you have to have a majority, a percentage of majority, and that is what the elected Pedro Sánchez, which is part of the Partido Socialista, I could say the details after this, but PSOE, or PSO, he is trying to form a coalition, a stable coalition, and this stable coalition is a majority, right? Because you do not vote for a prime minister like you vote for a president. You have to have a majority of party or in coalitions in order to have a prime minister be elected in parliament, elected within the party, not by the people. The people vote for senators and for deputies, and then they choose. Yes, and if you don't like it, well, then don't vote for that senator, or don't vote for that deputy in the future, because that is your representative. So that is just in brief. I think that, I mean, you ask me anything.
Yeah, so
is that sort of?
I think so. So they have a president now, and that's this Pedro Sánchez guy.
The prime minister.
Right. He's a prime minister.
Yes.
That they won't get a president until they get somebody to agree to form a government in this parliament.
So they have to. PSO has to form a coalition with other. You have to have a high percentage. There's a percentage you have to hit in order to be able to govern. So he has two options. He can either go with another partido called.
I understand that part, but
what are you asking then? So I guess I'm not clear.
So once the Socialist Workers Party, or
Uh-huh.
PESO,
Peso.
PESO,
Uh-huh.
does not have a large enough number of senators, representatives, to basically, quote, form a government.
Yes.
And they're going to need to make a coalition with some other parties.
Yes.
Once they form that coalition, then somebody's going to get elected. That position that's going to get elected is what position?
No.
Oh.
They will not get, no one will get. Pedro Sanchez is already elected.
Okay.
He will just have, because he is the ruling majority, he still has to think, there is a percentage still that he has to reach in order to form a government.
Okay.
So he has to make coalition. So even though he is already elected, he has to negotiate with his other parties. That could be Ciudadanos, or that could be Unidas Podemos,
Right.
And the other smaller parties. So he has to negotiate with others in order to rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, then the government is formed.
Yes.
And
so
then
they have to do this all this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then once that government is formed, then things can start. They can start passing legislation.
Yes, and they are. But the point is really because they really have to make they either force a party to reach a high percentage, or they force the party to make coalitions, so that you can have a real equal representation.
So everyone's directly elected, except for the president.
Except for the president of the party. Yes.
Right. So once that party got the majority,
yes,
then Pedro Sanchez became president because he was the representative of that party, who they would put up there as president.
Say this again.
The reason Pedro Sanchez is president is not because a bunch of people...
Now, when you say president, I'm taking president of the party, not president of the country. He is the prime minister.
Prime minister.
President of the party is different from being prime minister of the country.
Good. So then I think I'm meaning prime minister. So the reason he's prime minister is not because he got elected.
No.
It's because his party got a majority in the
parliament.
And therefore the president of that party becomes prime minister.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Right, yeah.
Thank you, that's actually helpful.
All right, yeah, thank you for your questions. Now, I can go even deeper if you want.
Please do not. we may get more questions on this, I might. All right.
So, well, this is how capitalism works, no?
By the way, we don't elect our president directly.
You're right, yes. Technically, we do not elect this president of the USA.
But we don't.
Yeah, the Electoral College is what elects.
Those people, and we definitely know that they're.
However, there is still a popular vote. Yes, that is still considered. You understand?
Then decide who is going to go to your electoral college. So
yes, which there isn't in Spain. There isn't a popular vote. There is just you elect the senators and deputies
through a popular vote. You elect those.
Yes,
so, but the actual prime minister is decided by the party that gets the majority.
Yes.
Yeah. But the ability for that party and president to start to act doesn't happen until a government is formed, where there's some sort of agreed upon coalition formed to say, now this party plus this party plus this party have agreed to form a government. Now we're going to go forward and make some laws.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. This is the most vague, shortest, brief way of stating this, but Andy doesn't want me to continue. So
because it's all capitalist democracy, which is a sham.
It's a disgrace to Spanish politics, but we'll leave it.
Yeah.
Forgive my friends.
Go ahead.
In Spain. All right. So I guess the point being, we will heavily edit this out so we can try to save room for most important opinions. Ours.
That's staying. The truth comes out.
All right, let's focus. All
Go
right.
ahead.
So, by the way, I just wanted to say that yes, these extra seats were for Catalonia are 47, and for Basque, the country the Basque region is 80 seats that are of Congress deputies that are given to them for political reasons, which I'm not going to at this moment.
Regions are regions of Spain where people who live there say, we don't want to be part of Spain, we want to form our own country.
Yes, more so Catalonia, just
Than
recently
Basque,
with the referendum that happened some years ago. Yes, I think Basque is not strong enough to be able to...
Do they have that desire, though?
Even
it's like Quebec in Canada.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, so I think now we will just name these very the most major parties, just so that we can have an idea, because we kept throwing out some names, and I just want to do this very quickly before we continue. All right. There is the PPP, which is the Partido Popular, or the Popular Party, which is led by Pablo Casada, and that is the center right. Now, they were in power for some time, and then now they have been ousted. So there is the PSO, which is the Partido Socialista Obrero Español, or Spanish Socialist Worker Party, which Andy will have lots to criticize for.
And just to say that since Franco's departure, death, most of the governments have been formed by either the Socialist Workers' Party or the Popular Party. It's been some sort of combination of either of those two parties.
Those are the major ones. Yeah. Like in Mexico, there was the PRI and the PAN.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What I love about outside of the USA, by the way, I just have to comment, which is in Mexico and in Europe, you have multiple parties. I don't understand US politics because you cannot have other parties but Democrats and Republicans, which is really sad. Not enough fight, battle, and discussion for other other policies. All right, and then there is Unidas Podemos, which changed from Unidos Podemos, and they consider themselves to be very strong feminists. They are the very left leaning.
They have considered themselves the far left.
The far left, yes. And that is led by Pablo Iglesias, a very charismatic person, very loved in Spain, and
Spanish AMLO.
Let's not reduce. But he has also been said to have been the mastermind behind a lot of the politics that happened with Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, as well as lots of political dealings in Bolivia. And then there is Citizens, which is Ciudadanos. It's the Catalan center-right liberal party formed in 2006, opposed to the Catalonian independence. And we'll leave it there. I think we'll leave it. Oh, one important one that we'll be discussing, which is Vox. So I shouldn't have stopped. Vox is the far right, and they are saying something very similar to what Donald Trump is saying, which is make Spain great again. And it is led by Santiago Abascal.
Explicitly anti-immigrant, explicitly against Catalonian independence, and explicitly in support of the good old days of when Franco was dictator.
Yes. There have been 24 seats.
And I think one of the things they want to do is Spain has a somewhat decentralized government where there's some level of regional autonomy, at least that's what I've read, and they would like to get rid of that.
Yeah. Well, 24 seats for the very first time. This is huge because 24 seats may not seem a lot, but since Franco's era, since Franco, there's only been one deputy on the far right that was elected, that was Piñar. And after that, then Vox was elected, and then Vox won a majority in Spain, and now 24 seats. So it's something very scary, and we will discuss it. But we've now laid out the foundation. I think now we can discuss from this platform. We've just laid out the very, very basics. I've spoken enough.
So now you want me to say something?
Yes.
So I guess I would say that a lot of the rise of Vox is frightening and is disconcerting, and is part of a nationalist rise that's taking place across Europe. But the notion, I think people are saying, oh good, we stopped Vox because we got these socialists elected, the Socialist Workers' Party, and the far left has essentially given up its own agenda and formed an alliance. The reason, this was a very big turnout for this election, 9% more than the last election, because essentially the socialists ran on, we have to stop the fascists. They didn't run on fighting austerity because this Socialist Party pushed an austerity agenda. They didn't run on being anti-military because this Socialist Party in Spain, the one that was just elected, actually pushed PSOE, Socialist Workers' Party, pushed a pro-military, build a military in Spain agenda, and they certainly didn't run on rights within Spain, because they also supported the crackdown on Catalonia, the jailing of those people who pushed for the referendum in Catalonia. And even though they were like squeamish about the level of violence used against Catalonians, they ultimately said, well, you're gonna, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. So these socialists essentially are actually for positions that the far right is just on a more extreme version of. So again, what you have is, and worse, the far left, which was supposed to stand for something that was like for socialism, for revolution, for a whole new sort of economy, basically. That's what the far left should have been standing for. The far left, Podemos, or
Podemos, yeah.
Okay, Podemos.
Yeah, that one, just,
they have essentially formed an alliance with these centrists to stop the fascists. Okay, and guess what you're going to do? Yes, now you have socialists in power, but these socialists in power have no fear of having to deal with the left. They don't have to build a government of the left. They're going to be able to build a government of the center. They've already appointed the economist that they've put in there was a guy who's celebrated by European Union as a person who's pro-austerity. The British economist actually said, we want the Socialist Party because we think they're going to bring cuts to pensions, cuts to essentially the welfare state that Spain has.
Pedro Sanchez, the economist you're referring to.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he is the leader of this
project. Well, then I'm saying the British economist, the actual magazine, actually called.
Oh, I see.
You're right. Pedro Sanchez is the guy. He's in there. Mm-hmm. But also, the British economist was actually urging for a vote for the socialists because they're going to do a better job pushing austerity than the Popular Party did, because they have a left cover for it. And they do have a left cover because the left has completely capitulated itself and pushed itself inside of this centrist so-called socialist being. There's only one party right now which actually stands for something pure and stands for something that people will be able to make sense of, and that's Vox. That's it. There's only one party that actually right now people who might look for something are going to see a principle in. It's not the left party. It's not the far left. The far left has now given up. And the center socialists are going to be delivering austerity to working class right now. The major issue is not Catalonia for Spanish workers. It's unemployment. That's the major issue for Spanish workers. I think by 61%. And there's massive unemployment among youth and 14% unemployment among workers in Spain. So I'm convinced that this Socialist Party is going to deliver more austerity, more unemployment, and in the context of the next round of global economic crisis in which Spain and European Union is going to fall into, it's going to be these socialists who are going to be administering the cuts to workers. And the far left has already given up its agenda to them to say we represent an alternative, because they've already sold their souls to these so-called socialists and Socialist Workers' Party. So guess what? Guess who the only group that's going to actually stand for something that's going to appeal to workers and sound like it's militant and sound like it's principled and sound like it's standing for something? It's going to be those Nazis or the fascists. That's what it's going to happen. So essentially, I told Eduardo this. I said I wanted to title this episode "How Not to Fight Fascism," which is you basically don't put forward any positive platform for what you really stand for. All you say is elect us so you don't get them. At the same time, the actual policies you have are not that different than those policies there, only a question of degree. This is not the way to fight fascism. This is the way to feed fascism. All right? And so this is exactly the same policy the Democratic Party has, the Democratic Socialists of America have in fighting Trump. And Trump is not Vox. I'm sorry. But if you were going to call him a fascist of the sorts that are within Vox, it's the opposite. You don't fight them electorally. You fight them by basically bringing down their governments through mass waves of strikes. Working class struggle. That's it. So we are going to see fascism on the rise in a few years in Spain because of this momentary diversion, this momentary celebration of Socialist Party coming to power, but coming to power only because it said it scared everyone with the fascists. But once it delivers austerity, people are going to run to the fascists because the left doesn't stand for anything, and the left has already given that up. And it's an important lesson for us to learn, because we're doing the very same thing in this country. We're fighting a so-called right by supporting these centrist parties and building a left-wing cover for it.
So I suppose you are saying that Because PSO is a democratic socialist party. Yeah. Like the Bernie Sanders. So democratic.
Yeah, so it's not, you're saying PSO and I'm saying Socialist Workers' Party. I have trouble with PSO. So
Yeah, that's all right. PSO, which is the Socialist Workers' Party. PSO is, you're saying, is essentially breathing, causing fascist rise.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's like the Democrats gave us Trump. No, it's exactly the same because, and it's not. Of course, they're coming to power on the opportunistic notion. Oh, we're stopping that, but all their policies tail the fascists. All their policies are in line with what they are. We're not going to let Catalonia have independence. We're not going to actually have a workers' government. We're going to actually help austerity come. Okay, yeah, and they're going to be they're actually creating a pro-war agenda until building the military. So they're just slight. They talk a less enthusiastic nationalist game, but Socialist Workers' Party, its policies are essentially nationalistic ones, and they're not going to be letting immigrants in. They're going to have their own Democratic Party way, very similar Democratic Party way of saying we've got to like modulate the border. So yes, they're breeding fascists because they don't represent a political opposition to those policies. The only what you would need is like the fascism is an aspect of capitalism. Fascism is when capitalism takes its mask off and shows you what its real face is. All these democracies are just like, well, here we're going to hide behind democracy. But fascism is about race. Capitalism is about racism. It's about competition. It's about whoever can get theirs against somebody else. That's what capitalism is about. So and fascism thrives off of that sort of thing. So the only alternative to fascism is socialism, is working class collective ownership and running of society. And the socialists have given up on that project because they've now junked themselves inside of this crappy capitalist government, which is going to create a cover for the capitalists to basically smash workers some more. And then when workers get smashed more, and the socialists say, "Well, we're doing it because we're not the fascists," they're going to push the workers into the fascists because workers are going to want somebody to stand up for them. And I guarantee you, Vox is going to say, "Oh, they're not doing anything for you," and they're right when they say that. And they're going to say, "Come our way, we got some answers for you," and we're not going to buckle up and sell you out just like these people did, which is not true, but they're going to make that appeal.
Well, I think it's important to note that in history, the history of this party, which was
which party?
PSO,
okay,
which is I will say it, I think, for you, so we're not confusing our audience. It's just the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. I think it's important that we understand that it was formed in 1879 and that has governed Spain for periods of its history. But it was created by a communist, socialist.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I think confuses people when we discuss this, because most people think, well, you have a socialist in power, and they might be confusing what it means to be a socialist in power, because this is the same thing that happened with Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, who also was an activist / socialist back in her younger days, and then went into the Socialist Party in Brazil, and was elected and was in power as the president. And then here we have something similar, where you have this evolving party. So I think for our audience, this might be what you're saying might be confusing, because you're right. I do think that when we have these, it's almost like when we have these parties that don't declare revolution and organize in a different system, but organize within a capitalist framework of system, then yes, that is what they are having to overlap with some of the similar ideas and ideology that far-right candidates.
Correct, and will put a socialist veneer on what will ultimately be an attack on workers.
So just to clear out, you're telling our audience that it is not a socialist.
It is not socialism, but it is what people will know. They don't know my socialism as socialism. People know Bernie Sanders' socialism.
Right.
People will know Spanish socialism. People will know Brazilian socialism. And what have all these socialisms brought other than a fantastic enthusiasm by workers in those countries for the fascists? because those socialists sold them out. Those people elected those socialists with the hope that they would deliver something.
Even maybe the socialists in Venezuela is also...
That's another example, exactly. Like, of course, I'm against what Guaido was doing, okay?
Or and I don't... Maduro is the one in power.
Maduro is the one in power, but the one that the U.S.
trying to coup.
Yeah, with the support of the United States.
Yeah, right.
But let's be clear, this leftist Maduro has created an immense amount of space for the United States and the right wing to come in and basically claim, you got to go down. Mm-hmm. And I oppose it. I oppose my own country getting in there, and I know why my country is doing it, because it has no intention of doing anything good for the Venezuelan people or for the people of this country. And them taking down the Venezuelan government harms us, harms our cause here in this country. But Maduro has helped their cause by essentially turning people against socialism in his own country, because he's used it to immiserate them, or at least to create all these corrupt sort of cronyism that exists within and corruption that exists within the Venezuelan government.
Yep.
So when these sorts of socialists come to power, socialists who want revolution, we cannot celebrate. We have to see it as something, oh my gosh, it's a scary moment. It's scarier to me than, well, it's just as scary as people get a Vox. I get scared of what these socialists are about to do to workers that's going to drive them to Vox. And what am I going to say as a socialist? Am I going to say, oh, but that's not the socialism either? And people are going to say, I don't care. That's what socialism stands for. That's how I understand socialism. And I can't really argue with them. I can only say, well, that's not what I mean when I say socialism. But that's why it is good that there are things like the struggles of the yellow vests. Like, there are strikes happening in this country. There are strikes happening in Spain. I was reading about it. Like, massive amounts of strikes going on in Spain. Working class struggle is the only way to fight fascism, is the only way to fight capitalism. You cannot fight it at the ballot box, and the notion that it can be defeated at the ballot box is a complete fiction. What it allows it to do is it only allows it to grow and get stronger as the victors of the ballot box disappoint workers and drive, and then workers are driven into these far right parties, because the far left, and this is the problem, it's not just about Socialist Workers' Party, it's about Podemos. Podemos has essentially said, we're going to unify. We're going to build a coalition with you to fight to keep the fascists out, but that means the left has given up its own independence now. It doesn't stand for anything. That's what I meant when I said Vox is the only party that stands for something. The left was the Podemos was supposed to stand for something alternative. Everyone knows that the Socialist Worker Party are the centrists, are like the Democrats, But the left was supposed to stand for something different, and now it's done in Spain exactly what is done here. As you celebrate the pluralism of all those parties, well, they're all going under and doing the same thing we're doing here, which is everyone's finding a house under the wing of some capitalist party.
So here is what others will say, because in defense of some that are trying to fight against Vox, in defense of those that are trying to bring out progressive policies into place and enact protections for minorities. Unidas Podemos, which is the party United We Can, they are against austerity measures, right? This is what they represent. They are pro-welfare state. They are progressive taxation. But they are socially liberal. They are liberal immigration, pro-LGBT plus, feminism and minorities. They want to remain in the EU, and they change and to change the economic policies of the bloc against as well corruption scandals. That is what Pablo Iglesias, who was very charismatic and beloved, with the long hair and very handsome and attractive. Do I look like Pablo Iglesias?
Oh.
Do you understand? Like, this is what he shows up to the debates. I saw the Spanish debates, and he shows up to Parliament. He shows up, and he is there standing, and he has worked in Latin America to try to also bring lots of, like I said, he was a mastermind behind a lot of trying to change the political chaos in Latin America. He's standing for some of the things I think that you would agree with, right?
But then he's handing them over to the Socialist Workers' Party and saying we want to support a vote. They supported a vote for this pro-austerity party. So I'm sorry, you can't be against austerity and then support a vote for it. Of course, they did it in the name of fighting fascism, but that's opportunism. So they're not interested in fighting fascists. They're interested in opportunistically taking government. That's what they're interested in. They think they can fool people into saying, with us taking government, we're going to avoid fascism. That's a lie. They're just delaying people's appetite for fascism because the socialists are about to deliver austerity to workers and push them into fascism. So no, they're not interested in fighting fascism. They're interested in getting elected, and they use people's fear of fascism and genuine disgust of fascism to opportunistically fight to elect me to oppose fascism, not elect me to deliver you to an anti-capitalist agenda, a pro-socialist agenda, a socialist revolution. No, that's not what they did. So they can say what they stand for. I'm watching what they did and saying, no, your words don't match up with your deeds, and I'm judging you by your deeds.
Oh, God. No, we shouldn't vote. No. We have no reason to vote.
You cannot vote your way out of capitalism, and you certainly can't vote your way out of fascism. And I do think there's people. We're going to face this in 2020, right? The anti-Trump thing. We're going to get Donald Trump, folks. Brace yourselves. 4 more years of Donald Trump. Democrats aren't going to win. But we're going to hear such a drumbeat of everything has to be driven towards the election. Fight Trump, and the Democrats aren't going to offer any real vision of an alternative. Of course they won't. But we're not even going to talk about socialists doing that. And this is why it's such a horrible thing that the brand of socialism in this country, which is really being defined and led by the Democratic Socialists of America, is a brand which is inside the Democratic Party, captured by the Democratic Party, and is attempting to it's saying it's driving the Democratic Party, or trying to drive the Democratic Party to the left, but really what it's doing is tailing the Democratic Party into opportunistically getting elected on the basis of not being Trump, and then once they get elected, smash workers like they always do every time. And then if the Democrats get elected, I guarantee you 2024, it ain't going to be pretty what we get then. It's going to make Donald Trump look like, oh, I wish we got him. Mm-hmm. And that's how this is working. That's how we've been shifting to the right, is by the left giving up on its ideals and the right sticking with them. And that's who these fascists are. They're right-wingers. I don't agree with them, but they're sticking to their principles. They're sticking to their guns, literally. And we can't fight that unless we are principled for our ideals of internationalism, of working class collective struggle, of getting rid of corporate control of things through worker collective ownership. That's what our vision is. That's the only alternative vision that can deliver people salvation out of this. There's nothing else. And that's true in Africa, like we talked about the revolution there. It's true in Europe, and it's true in the United States. And it's more desperately needed, and yet it's more desperately being abandoned at the very time when capitalism, I think, is exposing itself as being a crippled beast unable to deliver for people. Unfortunately, what's happening is the only people who are seemingly able to benefit from that has been the far right, because they're the only people standing up and saying, we'll defend you. And they are the only ones who are showing some level of principle, political principle, awful principles, but still principle that they won't give up on and compromise on. And workers who are desperate that's going to appeal to them. We have to make that same appeal. We have to make that same uncompromising appeal to people. But every time we do that, we're always told, well, that's too much. You can't do that. The right wing doesn't get carried away with too much. The left wing now has to stand up for its too much. It has to say, no, we want it all.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean when you say that it's an appeal? When I think of anti-immigrant sentiment and rhetoric that is being broadcasted and being declared from the Vox Party, it is something that a lot of people would be appalled by.
Yeah.
And when you say it is what appeals to people and would potentially even bring in from the other parties to Vox and create them a higher force, I would think that it isn't so much appealing if people are not generally that
right.
way in
Europe.
Yeah,
of course, right now, yeah. I mean, and I would say that the reason that PSO,
the Socialist
Workers' Party
yeah.
got elected was because currently there is still a strong left-wing, pro-immigrant, pro-worker sentiment in Spain. I think that's still the general sentiment that got them elected. But it ain't going to stay that way. And it won't stay that way because things are getting more polarized. But the fact is, just like in this country, where the Democrats have their own anti-immigrant agenda, it just sounds different than Trump's anti-immigrant agenda, and it sometimes sounds nicer, but it's just as brutal on immigrants often as Trump's is. We are going to find it's the same thing in Spain there, which is the Socialist Workers' Party is going to enact anti-immigrant, some sort of border controls, some sort of anti-immigrant. We will do it nicer, but we're not for open borders. That's the only pro-immigrant position a party could be for, is open borders. Well, clearly, the Socialist Workers' Party is not for that, because they are planning on smashing Catalonia and throwing them in jail for even deciding that they're going to have, the break from, the holy Spanish state that, the Socialist Workers' Party wants to keep together. So if they are willing to keep the party together and, crack heads in Catalonia, they're certainly willing to crack heads as people cross the border. And what I'm saying is they don't represent a political alternative to that. And when times get tougher, when unemployment gets worse, then what are people going to look to? They're not going to look to socialists. They're going to look to those other folks. So that pro-immigrant position, which is happening right now, when it's 14% unemployment among workers, what's it going to be when it's 23%? And then 40% among youth? Do you think it's just going to stay there? And do you think if the left has no alternative for them, you don't think people are going to be appealing to, I got to save my ass by kicking immigrants out? No.
I think what you're saying is interesting, especially since I think Spain knows clearly what it was like to be under dictatorship under Francisco Franco, who, like I said, he was the longest ruling dictator in Europe. And people remember who he was. And even just the excavation of his bones and trying to locate a spot to bury him, because his family members are trying to find this sacred spot for Franco, is very controversial. And it just even what's it called, deburying, when you bring
exhuming
when you even mass graves from Franco's era, is even creating politicization, because Vox is saying to keep those. Why are we bringing up old wounds?
Well, because there was several 100,000 people killed by this dictator after the failed civil war.
So
the revolution that the people fought for.
Yes, thank you. And I think for a lot of Spaniards and a lot of friends that I will, if I'm just trying to embody them and trying to voice their thoughts here as I am here on this platform with you, would say that Spain will never go back to that era, and that this is something different from the USA, where they have known what it is to be under a fascista, a dictator, and that living that life, having had still even generations from that time, because it was only 40 years ago, is a reminder of not going back to that era. Yes, 24 seats already, it's a lot from Vox, and the anti-immigrant sentiment, as well as a lot of things like banning abortions, from Vox, I should say, for our audience, what also Vox stands for. Vox is also claiming that there is violence against men, rather, and that there is more hatred towards men than women, and even not condemning the 2016 rape that happened to a young woman, that happened because there was a bull's run. They do this running of the bulls. Thank you, in English, and by 5 men. So Vox has not condemned, and there is a lot of lowering the taxes, or actually taking away the taxes, and so just to mention a few things for our audience. But this is what I think if I had some representation of my Spanish friends would say, that there is this reminder of the Franco era, where they will never go back to that time. And so what you're saying is,
that's not true. It's not true. They misunderstand why fascism comes into play, because they misunderstand that it's not actually about people having a fondness for brutality. It's about capitalist crisis and the kinds of answers workers find in the context of capitalist crisis is ongoing and will continue, and the way it resolves capitalist crisis is it must exploit workers greater. Okay, so unemployment will get worse in some areas. Polarization and immiseration will get worse in some areas. It will get worse in Spain. It will get worse for people in Europe. It will get worse for people in Africa and the United States. And fascism will rise out of the fact that these capitalist countries are going to come into conflict with one another over the fight for profits, and they are going to basically say, my nation over all you, and it's going to push the kinds of policies that led to people like Hitler or Franco or Mussolini. I don't know which countries it's going to appear, but it's not going to be a question of, oh, we remember. No, the things that capitalism will present to us are going to drive us towards fascism unless we can build an alternative to it. So they think that fascism is a choice. It's not. It's an aspect of capitalism that we will increasingly see more and more come to bear as capitalism gets worse and worse for people, unless we build a socialist alternative. And the socialist alternative is literally the socialist alternative, which should be being built right now, is literally rebranding itself as capitalism. So that's why it will return. I don't know if it's going to return exactly to Spain, but it's going to return to Europe. It's going to return to the United States. It's going to return all around, because unless we can, the only alternative to it is to stop capitalism and to build workers' power. That's it. So.
Yep, and I think again I got your point. Thank you. And in the area where I find myself agreeing with you is that even Pablo Iglesias, the leader of
Podemos.
Unidas Podemos, yes, has limitations within the framework of parliament, because he has not stated this, but let's say he wants to state open borders. There is not really going to be much advancement within parliament for that to happen. And so the compromise there is, whilst the Socialist Workers' Party says they can help develop their southern neighbors in Africa to their development so that there can be less immigration. Unidas Podemos, the party United We Can, they are stating I think their compromise, it wouldn't be open borders. It would be, they have stated that they would grant asylum in their embassies, which I think is radical. If we think within this framework, if we think within how much we limit ourselves within the paradigm of the government we limit ourselves to, which is ruled by a capitalist class. And that is not enough, right? But that is how he has to go in order for him to be able to create some.
But
so I agree. I agree that there is limitations, but
it's if any group of people should know that capitalism does not stand still, that capitalism will not just stay put and be like, okay, that's as far as we go. That's as much as we're going to take from you. Socialists are the ones who are supposed to know that. So no socialist should be satisfied with asylum, because that asylum, as we see with Julian Assange, has a limited lifespan. And at some point, the stakes get higher in your country, and it's no longer, no, now you got to get out of my country. Asylum no more. And socialists know that. They know that. Or if they don't know that, then why are they calling themselves socialists? So I don't actually blame liberals for being for capitalism, because they're being true to themselves. But why are socialists selling capitalism? Because that's what you do when you say we can put a Band-Aid on this and it'll be okay. Because of course I'm for asylum, but no. What I really am for is open borders, and people come in if they want a job, right? I want to unite with those workers so we can bring down our respective governments internationally. That's why I want to be arm in arm with my workers in Mexico or Algeria or wherever. It's not just to be friends. It's to join in a common project of international global revolution. So that's why we need open borders as well, so we can have that sort of association.
The other route I want to try and take this to is Pablo Iglesias, even the founder of the Socialist Workers' Party, were very pro the party, very heavily involved in young socialist groups.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And maybe you know where I'm heading here with this, but so was Dilma Rousseff. So were many people.
So was I.
in a
which is an organization which is now dissolved and become the DSA, which we can talk about sometime. Actually, it'd be a great episode. What's happened?
You're just going to create us to have lots of enemies.
We should definitely talk about it. This is what's happening, and Iglesias is to the left of Bernie Sanders. Let's be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie Sanders is a right winger compared to this Iglesias guy. So, if you think that guy, I know that guy's going to sell people down the river. What do you all in the United States think Bernie Sanders is going to deliver? Or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Well, they started off and here's what I'm trying to get at is when people eventually run or they go to try to transform something and try to they become active. AMLO, he was as well an organizer,
but he didn't pretend to be a socialist.
No, this is true, but he was an organizer.
Yeah,
and
for the working class. And
Dilma Rousseff was for a socialist party in her younger days, and she was even tortured. Right? We mentioned it in an episode for some of our audience. I can always refer to the Brazilian elections. And it seems funny that we're always talking about some things around elections, Mexican elections, Brazilian elections.
That's you.
Spanish elections.
You love elections. You love to vote.
And check out our voting episode where Andy and I battle on YouTube.
Well, go ahead and say it.
So it just they belong to they genuinely belong to these socialist groups, right? And their heart was there, and probably a lot of their education was there, and ideas and their brainstorming was there, that made them, shaped them really. And what has happened? We have touched on this somewhat, but what has happened? Eventually, they get older or whatever, or they just become involved and forget their politics or their stance. Yeah. I think that there's something to say about this, because this is not the very first time. We've had other people, which I cannot think of the top of my head right now, but I know there are other people that were very involved in their youth in socialist working groups. And here they are in power, and they are not doing what they really, really genuinely gave their heart to in their participation.
Right, but they are doing what we have seen socialists and radicals do every time they take power within the state. They are finding themselves hemmed in by that capitalist state, and ultimately they find themselves managing that state, running that state at the expense of the working class that they went there to supposedly help. You cannot help working class with a bourgeois state. It is a that's why go back to the early interview with the socialist me. What did I call it? The dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. That's what Marx talked about it. So there's no way to turn the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, which has this veneer of democracy. It's just a veneer, folks. What it is a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship of the capitalist rule over us, using the apparatus of the state, using corporate control, using the media, using the military and the police, the NSA, the internet, Google control. That operates as a collective dictatorship device to make sure that we never get what we want, and that they always do at our expense. So we have to impose our dictatorship on them, the dictatorship of the proletariat. That means a revolution. That means an insurrection. That will require armed workers, and it will require taking down of these government institutions, not from within by getting elected, but literally from outside, from within, but through strikes and general strikes and mass strikes. And these folks have given up on the possibility of that. That's, I think, the biggest thing is they no longer think that that's either possible or necessary, and they're trying to find another way, maybe a potentially more peaceful way. And what they end up doing is delivering more violence to workers, and they they stave off the revolution that we need to stop this thing that's coming, which is more crisis, more war, and I do believe an eventual either global conflagration of war or whatever. Well, I think that's going to happen well before we actually make it impossible for us to live in this environment, and that's also happening. So they've given up, and they don't think they think that way, but that's what I believe. That's what's happened. They've given up on what we know from our own history is what is required. Now, I think part of the reason people have given up is also those revolutions, which, particularly in Russia, which was a working class revolution, it became something else. But it called itself socialist, called itself communist, and I think it's given people reason to say we don't want to try that again. So our history of struggle does weigh on us as well. So this has now taken us into a bit of a different issue, but I think socialists don't believe in the alternative that we are supposed to be fighting for. We're afraid to believe in it because we haven't seen working class struggle that we think can lead to it, and we have in the back of our mind China, North Korea, Russia, just sitting there going like, are we just doing the same thing? And I think so. So we are I think many of us are just split, and we're not committed, and we're not willing to go all in on the idea of insurrection and revolution because of that past and because of this present. That's my first guess.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think now it could be argued, I think, if we invited a guest, right? But I do think you brought up earlier that you had even joined a socialist working group. Yes,
in an international socialist organization, it dissolved itself 2 weeks ago. Good thing, and a good thing, because now I can officially join the Democratic Party through DSA. So well done, ISO.
We need to do an episode on this. No, seriously.
Okay,
seriously.
we will.
And you were.
I was going to ask you about that.
You're a very big part of this group, party, right?
Yes.
So I think it's very important that we take note of it. So what I want to say is, though, for this episode, is just that I think that there is this idea that people can become social. They are socialists and they keep their socialist values and they continue on and they work into power and they try to implement this ideology into place. But what we are finding here and what we are seeing as a pattern in the countries that we have covered is that it's not possible. And this is what I think we're trying to get at, is really the message out is that this is what causes people to give up and causes fascism to rise, the far right, because it is something that is being bred and brought about because we are creating this false hope for workers. And I think that there is a lot within what we have just shared that is valuable for us to learn here in the USA.
Which is why which is why I wanted, when I thought more, because at first I was like, Spain, what are you talking about? Because again, I had to learn about it. You were in Spain. I wasn't in Spain.
By the way, hi to our friend Gemma, who is there.
Yes,
hopefully
she's there.
She's listening to
and
this.
we're going to invite her back. We're going to talk about Venezuela next week.
Right.
For her and Kenny are going to join us for round 2 of coup versus revolution.
Right.
But you were there, and
I stayed there for
and you
some
were
time.
Like, but the more I read about this, the more I was like, oh man, there's so many lessons here. So
what I will say is that there are going to be, if my friends in Spain watch this, I doubt, because this is in English, but if I translate for them and show them when I'm there, because I will be there this year, and hopefully maybe I can get someone, just side note, when I am there this year, maybe we can interview someone from Spain that speaks English and is able to give to, we can interview as a guest. But what if they were to hear any of this, they'd just be enraged with you.
Bienvenidos.
Because they would not agree with you. They would say that they are really trying to luchar contra el fascismo. They're trying to battle. No, it's not battle. It's struggle against, fight against towards fascism. And a lot of them just cherish and love Pablo Iglesias, and they really think that there is changed to be and poured energy there should be done, and everything else should be against Vox.
Okay. Well, I'll let your friends from Spain have the last word. I won't say anything about it. I think I've spoken my piece.
Yes.
And any friend of Eduardo is a friend of mine.
I think just again, it's just important that we bring this. I have to say, I'm thinking that this is important for these 2020 elections, when young people. I'm thinking about the young people. This is why the young people will really rally around Bernie Sanders, and
possibly
socialism.
I'm not sure he's going to make it this time, even to the. We'll see. I'm not.
You're saying that maybe another incumbent is trying.
Yeah, like I think Warren is doing a good job taking all his positions. So, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, just even 2016, you can see the young people that were rallying around.
Exactly.
What I'm trying to say is, young people rise for hope, and then they are disillusioned.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that young people, especially that are going to watch this, for them to really see that there is alternatives, is what I'm trying to get at. And this episode really has an example outside where we may not have had a dictator like Spain had, but they did. And what limitations there are within a capitalist ruling class. And that's what I'm just trying to get at. So anyhow, our young people really have lots of hope, and especially in these critical dark times, with the world changing and climate chaos or breakdown, however you want to call it, is emerging, right? So anyhow, that's all. I'm thinking about my Sahul, that's why.
yes. So I don't think I have anything more to say about this.
I don't either. I think we've covered a lot, and I think we really dug into it. Thank you.
And thank you for coming up with this idea. I believe if we can pull it off, our next episode is going to have Hema and Kenny here again.
Yes.
To revisit.
How long is Hema?
She'll be back by next.
Oh,
next
just
time.
a week.
Yeah, just a week. Yeah, I know. But that's what she wanted for that
I
trip.
never go to Spain for 1 week.
Yeah. But it's because of work and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
I get that. Yeah.
Hopefully we can revisit our discussion around Venezuela in light of the events that are taking place there, and the uprising / coup. I don't know what people want to call it. I think it's a coup. Hema, I think, might be wanting to call it an uprising. But I think we'll revisit that discussion.
Yeah, and we should remind folks that yesterday is when Guaidó woke up in the morning and woke everyone up with the announcement that you should go against Maduro. So I think we should have another round.
Yeah, and we are coming on our 1-year anniversary.
Yes.
From doing this stuff for 1 year. May 15th was our first episode last year.
Thanks to Andy
and Eduardo
for really doing this. We have to give credit to Andy. He does all the editing. Wakes up real early in the morning, chases me on the phone to make sure that I get everything on time, and I still try to. It went from turning things in last minute for 6 days or 5 days to finally doing it in 24 hours.
Yeah,
so thank you very much.
But thank you for being willing to be
and posting this in all our Medium forms. It's just amazing. Andy's work really is just incredible, and then sending me still a copy on my email for me to look at.
So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I've really even something like this. If we weren't doing this, I wouldn't be looking into these questions. No, I wouldn't. I mean, we would talk occasionally, obviously, still about some of this stuff, but it's kind of keeping me fresh and thinking about all these different aspects of what's going on in the world. I mean, there's work going on in our union right now. We had a good day today, which there's not much. I'm not going to say anything about that, but but being able to keep abreast of these other events helps orient me for the work I'm doing in my school, in my union. And with other activists who we are trying to talk about and figure out what it means to be a socialist. Unfortunately, I would say there is no alternative for young people right now, because there's just individuals like me, because I actually think the institutional socialism doesn't really exist in any meaningful way.
Like you mean there are other lone wolves as well?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And then we you can attach yourself to one of us lone wolves, and we can talk as pairs and threes and fours. But I think that's really the rebuilding project that's before us. and that's a very unappealing. Well, it seems very small in the face of the scale of these problems. So people are going to always want to get part of these bigger things like DSA, and say this is where the action is at, but it's not. There's no action there. The action is they're selling capitalism, and they're defanging socialism and making it a lie to workers. So,
Well, I don't know how you do it. You are a high school teacher, a union activist, just doing all this with this project, and still trying to search. Well, you already found, I'm sure, but an apartment during this time. So it's just
and
incredible. And jiu-jitsu in the evenings. Thank you for telling me this again. For reminding me. It's just amazing what you do, Andy.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You only live one life.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, folks, for listening and tuning in. Please check us out on our 5 mediums, which is on YouTube, iTunes, podcasts, Google Play, BitChute, and Stitcher. Please rate, review, subscribe, and best of all, share with your family and friends, your community. I appreciate you for listening.
Thank you.
I said I would shout out to someone. I would shout out to my friends, Miriam, Abran, and they are new subscribers. So
hey, welcome.
So I hope they are listening and they will hear this. I said that I wouldn't Kelly. So thank you very much, and we'll catch us next week.
See you next week.
Ciao.